Hello and welcome to the show. I am back here on BeamNG Drive, going to be taking more of your automation vehicles around the autocross course. We start with a car from Uncle Bimmer, the Eagle Rec C20RX. It is an all-wheel drive i6 powered machine, just over 300 horsepower, about 200 torque. Little bit on the heavier side, 1,000 or just shy of 1,300 kilos. Not too bad in terms of the weight, but yeah, perhaps a little heavier than some. We have got a proper manual gearbox in this one. What do we like on the old power delivery front? Pretty good. I mean, 300 horsepower has tended to be around some of the area where the very fastest cars have been. This I would perhaps not quite expect it to challenge at the top of the table. It might be a tad too heavy. That being said, it is changing direction very, very well. And of course, on a circuit like this, that is very, very important. The gear ratios, while short, are not so short as to be unusable, which is always good. We've had quite a few with all sorts of interesting gear ratios to fight with. Are we going to slide through the next corner? Not quite. We can get it nicely enough through there. Yeah, I mean, it is a little heavier than some of the vehicles that we have seen go, of course. Doesn't feel it, though. Really doesn't feel too bad. It might suffer ultimately with its acceleration. What are we going to get up to? 76 or so miles an hour. Yeah, it's going to be a solid time. It's not going to be at the bottom of the table towards the last of the big braking zones. That's always a deceptively nasty hairpin there. A little bit wonky through that final section. Is the run across the line? It's a pretty nasty, it's a pretty impressive nasty crash actually, that one. 23.8. 23.8 for a first run is... Yeah, I think what we're likely to see with this is it's just going to be a solid vehicle. Maybe not going to set any outright records, but be a fun car to drive nonetheless, and still be fairly respectable. It'll try not to get too much oversteer through some of these faster corners. They're only marginally faster, but yeah, we'll try and not skid entirely across the road. As far as where am I going to make up some lap time, some run time. I mean, we didn't really do much wrong in that previous one. There's a couple of places getting the brakes right is always very important. I am kind of tending to run a little bit wider through there with cars now. I'm kind of, that's not going to find us any sort of run time, although we have got away with that remarkably well. I will say the Eagle is very, very tough. The Eagle is very tough. Normally I've had a lot smaller crashes with cars and the concrete barriers around here and lost wheels and done significant damage. That's not even stopped us going at a straight line. I don't know if we're going to go any faster in terms of the run, but, you know, credit where credit is due. 'Tis a tough car, this. 'Tis a very, very tough car indeed. I've now gone too early on the brakes, trying not to overshoot that corner. This is perhaps where we were wonkiest in that previous run, and it is not a quicker run, a 24/7. How much damage did we do to the front of the car, out of curiosity? Not too much, actually. I guess we just hit it in the right way not to actually tear the car apart. So, okay. Not a good run in terms of speed. It is a very good-looking car, this. I say it's a very good-looking car. It is a very BMW-esque car. I mean, it's a car I could imagine actually existing. It is a car that I could imagine actually existing from BMW. It's based, I guess, loosely on a 3 Series. But yeah, it is a nice-looking car, a sensible, realistic-looking car. We've had all sorts of cars, and that's, I've said many times before, I love about this series. We've had all sorts of cars, from the truly, truly bonkers to your more realistic contraptions. You know, this thing hasn't got the shortest wheelbase or the craziest of light weights to tackle the course, so perhaps not likely yet to go with the really, really top cars. But as a fairly realistic sort of sports car, this is an interesting prospect. And it is a good fun car to drive. There's enough power to make it exciting while still being nice and controlled. It's nice and predictable. There is no slithering around really from the back of the car, which is always good for me. We will run a little bit wide on the exit there. I think it's overall lacking a little bit in terms of the acceleration. We are just not as quick as some other cars. Its power to weight ratio simply isn't quite up there. Overall, elsewhere though, it does feel pretty good. Pretty good to drive. We have got just a couple more corners to go. I want to be flat out here, but it's so difficult to get that turn right there. It's a 23.6 for the car. I just couldn't get any more out of it. Just there was no more for me to find in that vehicle. Not a bad runtime. Not a bad runtime. It's going to go into a very busy part of the table. Our next vehicle, this comes from Denny's 01. It is the Mia 300. The first kind of use of the very, very classic Porsche body style. We've got pushrod suspension at the rear. This one is all-wheel drive, powered by a naturally aspirated i5. It is pretty light. In fact, this is quite an episode of lightweights here. This is 876 kilos with 296 horsepower, just shy of 200 torque. So that power to weight ratio is pretty damn good. I mean, we're 400 kilos lighter than the Eagle, and we are only down, we're down 6 torque and less than 20 horsepower. That's a big difference when it comes to this sort of thing. So, it's very, very short. Okay, well, very short gear ratios. Yeah, power to weight ratio on this is very, very good. It already does feel a little bit. It moves a lot around on its suspension. It almost feels like it's wheeling out of these corners. You can see it almost ducking and diving as we get on the brakes. Yeah, these gears are maybe actually a little too short. We'll have to see how it goes around here. It's definitely going to want to be in second coming out of some of these corners, but I'm having to change up to third for a lot of these short runs, and I don't think this has got a sequential box. Doesn't have a sequential box, so we are losing that that little bit of time having to, you know, have the car change gear, essentially, which won't help when we're having to change gear an awful lot. This is the difficult thing with building cars for this sort of thing. Yes, you want short gear ratios, but too short gear ratios on this sort of, well, run, and you're going to end up in different sorts of trouble. Power is nice and easily accessible. Top speed is just shy of... Whoa, we're going to have a big wobble there. Top speed was just shy of 80 miles an hour. The moving around on the suspension is a little sketchy, especially at these higher speed changes of direction. It is a 24/7 to start. 24/7 to start from the car. There's definitely more speed in it, I think, if we can get everything right. Actually might end up pretty close to the Eagle. It might have the power, might have the sort of power to weight ratio, it might have the acceleration. I'm not sure it's got the composure in some ways around a few of these corners. We'll have to wait and see. I do worry about the amount of time lost with a huge amount of changing of gear needed with the car. Turning to the corners is not too shabby. It's not the best. It's not, you know, the ultimate best handling car that we have had. However, it does get turned into them relatively well. The braking's pretty solid. It's what's the car going to do on the suspension when you're coming through a corner? Is it going to bobble? Is it going to bounce? Is it going to give the car some sort of trouble? That's what I am a little bit worried about. It's kind of a lot of weight. I say a lot of weight transfer. This feels like there's a lot of weight moving around. Not that there's much weight to begin with, but it is moving around a lot more in this car. We have seen it from a few vehicles with that little bit too softer suspension, potentially, causing grief. Of course, you have too stiffer suspension, you can still have problems as well with it. There's a very, very fine balance. Somewhere in the middle is what you want. I was too late on the brakes down there, trying to make up some time. They can get away a little bit. Whoa, not this again. That does not like that corner. That sort of acceleration zone, I think, is as I'm going to change gear is when we are trying to steer to get it through the archway. Oh, we're going to hit that. I couldn't get it fired up. through there. It was going to be a fraction faster run, but it still wasn't going to be great. That is a difficult car to extract speed out of. It is a difficult car to extract some speed out of. We will give it one last try. There are some places where we're going to have to be very, very careful with trying to get the change of direction as we're changing gear. There's enough power to spin the wheels in the car, and then it is more than happy to slide around. Even being all-wheel drive, it is more than happy to get some of that oversteer. Seems like an okay first sector, although struggling a little bit to get the front end turned in. Now, can we get less understeer through here? There we go. Get on the power. Well, fairly nice and early. We're playing it really, really dangerous with some of these walls. You've got to, though. If you're going to get quick times with the cars, you're going to have to play it close to some of these walls. This is all a little bit out of shape, actually, I fear. First part of the run was okay. We've ended up a tad bit out of shape on the way into this section. Can we make it up? We're going to have to go, as much bravery as we can down here. 79 miles an hour. It was a good stop that time around. We got the braking perfect. Yeah, we can't quite crack 80. It's not the fastest accelerating car that we have had, but it's okay. It's kind of in the ballpark, the lower end of the ballpark for the usual cars, but it is certainly in the ballpark. Let's get up to third nicely. I felt like a better run. It just wasn't. Ooh, we've done a terrible thing to the front to the front light. Yeah, I gave it everything. It's a bit difficult to drive on the suspension, a bit wobbly, a bit bouncy. Not terrible, but yeah, I could not really get it much faster than that. Our next vehicle, this comes from Premium Axle. It is the Sallang Super Special. Another all-wheel drive, this time naturally aspirated V6. We've got a sequential box in this one, which is nice. 322 horsepower, actually makes it the most powerful car of the day. 212 torque. It's round there or thereabouts in terms of the power. Fairly light, just under the 900 kilo mark. This could go quick. We've got full pushrod suspension all round. It's got some pretty decent tyres. We know this body it's a race car body, so it's going to be hopefully good for grip. Did a little bit of a longer wheelbase than the sort of K cars that have been going very quickly. But we'll have to wait and see. I would imagine a decent amount of downforce and everything on this. If the power is going to be used with a very high revving V6, if the power's going to be usable, it could be very quick. The braking, whoa, you are not as controlled as I would have liked in terms of that. Okay, so we've got to be a little bit mindful. It will slide out of these corners if we are not careful. The brakes did not feel great either. Now, there could be a couple of reasons. First of all, we have seen various issues with ABS causing grief for cars. It is also possible, I noticed this is of course starting off with big carbon ceramic brakes at the front, and they are cold. And if you start with cold brakes for a little while, they are not as effective. So that can catch you out a touch. And a lot of these cars have been not really heating up their brakes throughout the course, not until it gets to the last sort of part of the run. Yeah, there's a lot of braking here, but it's a lot of braking from 20 or 30 miles an hour for a little section. So yeah, brakes not getting up to temperature is an issue that I never really thought about when building a car or setting this up, but it is something that can happen. It does now feel a bit better, although it's still not got the most powerful, well, not as powerful aero brakes as I expected, considering it is a very light, full-on race car. Oh, it's a little bit of a scrape across the line. Little bit of a poorly positioned run to the line. It is going to go fastest car of the day, 20.2. If we can get the braking, if I can get the braking sorted for this early stage, I think this can get into the 19s. I think we should be getting to the 19s. It's another car with some very... I think I probably wanted third, but then almost immediately back to second. It's another car with fairly short gear ratios. A big slide through the second corner there. It does get away with it. Oh, yeah. Down here, it does not... It just doesn't want to stop. It's really struggling. to get the car slowed down. Turning is, I mean, it's kind of what you would expect for this sort of car. It does, once you've got it right, it does get turned into these corners pretty well. Although it's whatever you go for. I mean, this is still a lot of test for any car. You've got to have a lot of front end grip. I would like a little bit less oversteer, if at all possible. That'd be nice. Mid-engines, rear engines, probably not the ideal thing for this course. In some way, certainly not full-on rear engines. Unloading the front wheels slightly with all of that weight at the back is not really what you want for here. They might give you good traction in a rear-wheel drive car, which might negate some of that if you're going for a rear-wheel drive, but for the all-wheel drive monsters and the all-wheel drive cars that are fighting at the top of the table, little things like that could cost you a surprising amount of time throughout the course of a run. We are into the 19s, a 19.4 for the Sallang. It's not too bad. Can I go any faster than that? Might be tough. Might be tough to put this into an 18. I mean, we're gonna give it a damn good try. There have been cars where I've looked at them, looked at the stats, and thought there's no way that's going to do, you know, whatever speed, and it turns out it can. It turns out if this goes up into third, it does not like slowing down into that first corner. Really struggles getting it slowed down for that first corner. Gears on this are also, I mean, it's not so bad being a sequential box, but it's still a lot of change. Ideally, and I think a lot of the fastest cars we've seen have been cars in which either second or first, maybe even third for some of them. Basically, I want to be able to get out a lot of these early hairpins in a gear and get to the next hairpin without having to change. I think that is the dream. That is what you really want from a car here. Oh, a little wide, little understeer, but we can get away with getting then a nice run towards this next turn. Now, onto the back straight. We have seen some decent speed out of this car. It is certainly the fastest car of the day so far. Not cracking the 100 mile an hour. I think the record set by the Nugget was up to about 105, although that was very difficult to get slowed down from that sort of speed. This up towards the high 80s is, yeah, you know, that's good. There's good going. Down there, can we weave through these next few corners? Oh, it's a little wide there. It's the run towards the line. It's not a better run. Taking the wheel off. Oh, we've taken the wheel off and then caught the wheel. 20.7. Won't surpass the 19. I mean, you know, a mid-19 at one point would have taken you immediately to the top of the table. Now, it is still decent positioned, but it's not going to go fastest. The final vehicle to run through the course today, this comes from J-Dog. It is the Exodion Super Beam. It is a rear-wheel drive Mini. Flat 4, naturally aspirated again, so all naturally aspirated cars. A decent amount of power. Again, 313, just over 200 torque. It is the lightest car of the day at just 649 kilos. That is not much weight. This could well be going for a rear-wheel drive record. That is a 121.8, I believe, if it is controllable. The concern, of course, with this much power in a short wheelbase is it going to be horrendously twitchy? It's going to be pretty wheel spinny off the line. Already, oh god, the wheels are shaking themselves apart. I have a feeling this is not going to be on the controllable side of the spectrum. I have been that one there well and truly. Yet that wheel vibration is not good for the car. That might also give it braking issues. Basically, I'm going to have to be very, very careful. Jeez, once it started going, it just doesn't want to stop wobbling. Oh, that wheel spin is atrocious. We are going to have to keep this. I mean, basically, you start spinning the wheels, and because it shakes everything at the back of the car, it just goes in a direction. And if that direction is into a concrete barrier, you are not going to stop that. I say it's too much power. And this much power is okay in a rear-wheel drive car. It's too much power with excessive wobbling. Now, we have sort of talked about this in the past. Various cars have had issues with this. up to 65 miles an hour. It's got the acceleration to go way quicker, but it's not got the grip to do it. Oh no, it's gone. The wobbling could well be to do with too larger tyres on the vehicle, causing some weird kind of juddering effect. And, well, I mean, it did have some big tyres. Of course, you want decent sized tyres for traction, for grip and so on. But I think perhaps if you go too big, I mean, there's about 3 spins on that. That time's a bit irrelevant. Yeah, if you go too larger tyres and then you get into trouble. You can see it as it gets off the line, the amount it's shaking itself apart. So this run, we're going to take things very, very differently. We're going to have to be very, very cautious. That that rear-wheel drive record is looking fairly safe. Now, I might be able to drive this thing cautiously enough and still go quickly. Of course, I say that, it's so easy to start it spinning. It might even be tripoding as well. That certainly won't help with the spinning. Driving something like this cautiously is the only way I'm going to get through a run without spinning. And when you've got 3 runs to try and learn a car, well, a run without spinning is very, very important. I mean, this run here is still not going to be perfect. So we're going to have to just kind of tone it back pretty massively and hope that I can still make the most of, you know, some sort of speed in this car. There's a lot, I say there's a lot of oversteer. Doesn't quite match the all-wheel drive sports car thing, I've forgotten the name of it, the i4 Turbo that we drove when when literally the only way to get it through the corners was sideways. That was spectacular. That was spectacular. This is a lot less controllable. This is a lot less controllable when it starts going sideways. I'm terrified it's going to have a humongous accident, like it's about to. I can't barely stop that. Oh, this is not easy to drive. I have also noticed the brakes. It's got drum brakes at the rear. I mean, that could have been an issue. There are some way bigger problems that you can see as I just stick my foot down. In fact, hold on, if we have it in super slow-mo here, you can see... Look at the vibrations going through that. Look at that! I mean, no wonder I'm having all sorts of issues driving the car when it wants to do that. I haven't actually... I've seen a few cars do the wheel wobble. I've never looked at it in slow-mo. That's mad. I mean, that's why the wheels do fall off. If I sort of donutted with this car, I would rip the wheels off. I have seen some of the Porsches we've run have been able to rip the wheels off when doing a donut, and this would do it as well. So we're going to have to go for, I mean, there's a 130 or something in that. We're going to have to go for mega cautious run here. Just don't spin the car, and as I say that, we very nearly do. Yeah, lots of care taken with this. I mean, still make the most of the car's attributes, being very light. It's got good turning. It's got very good turning. We just cannot put the power down out of the corners, which is a shame because we can't make the most of what would be one of its strongest attributes, that incredible acceleration. We just can't use. It's just not controllable. It's not obtainable. There we go. My brain was farting trying to figure out that word. But yeah, it is still, even if we're only using a couple of 100 horsepower in this, you've still got to bear in mind that's a decent amount of power to weight ratio, and we've not got too much weight to lug around the corners. So theoretically speaking, we should be able to carry still some half decent speed around the corners. The issue, I say one of the issues we're going to find is we're not going to be quick down here because I can't get near full throttle without the wheels going. What are we doing? I don't even look at the speedo. We're doing about 70 miles an hour as we slow it down. I mean, that would easily crack 80 or 90 if we had control in it. It's got the power and the very light weight to do it, but there's nowhere near enough control. This time we are down to the hairpin. No problem whatsoever as we weave through the final section. There we go, 25-1. Considering the difficulties we had with the car, 25-1 is, yeah, pretty respectable. It's light, it's got a lot of grip, it can carry speed through the corners, but you've got to be so careful with that throttle. You just can't go near it. You saw the level of axle vibration, wheel vibration that we had. I think too big a tyres with nowhere near enough control. I don't quite know how you stop that. Other than having smaller tyres on the car, there may be different sorts of suspension. What suspension has that? It's got push rod at the back. I wonder if it is the push rod suspension that has the bigger issue with wheel wobble if you've got too large a rear tyres. Possibly. Because I think most of the cars that have had it have been push rod cars. But either way, yeah, that is difficult to drive with, but we got through it, we got it right, and we went pretty damn fast. On to our leaderboard, and it would be the Sallang that would be the fastest car of the day. It'll go into a 10th place. The 1:19.4 is still a pretty damn good time. As I said, you know, it wasn't so long ago a 19 would have put you to the very top. However, it is still, yeah, getting into the top 10 in a very competitive field. That is not a bad time at all. A pretty nice car to drive around the circuit. The cold brakes early on, a bit of a problem. We have to go a bit further down to find the other three vehicles. In fact, all three of them were fairly close together, despite being vastly different vehicles. The Eagle work would go into a 41st place with the 23.6. It would beat the Maya by about a second. Again, 24.5 isn't too terrible a time. The Exodion, with its just mad handling, would still manage a fairly respectable 46th place. So far I've had about 65 cars run, so yeah, these are not too terrible times, especially considering some of the difficulties. Certainly with the Super Bean, it's not a bad time for a rear-wheel drive car around here. The record is in the 21s, sure, but yeah, 25.1, considering you can't go near the power in that car, is not too bad at a time. Not too bad at a time whatsoever. That, though, is going to be it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.